Well, the Montgomery versus Caribe case, it has sent shockwaves through the trucking broker industry, but it also has huge implications on insurance. And if we're going to talk insurance, we got to talk to Tommy Ruke. Tommy is the word on these policies. And Tommy, thank you for joining me here today.
Doug, I appreciate it. Obviously, I've been studying this and hearing a lot from my friends about it and dealing with the insurance companies now about what we're going to do now. So we can talk about that.
Perfect. And that's why you're the man. So let's start off with Tommy. Brokers now can be sued. What does that mean in terms of what they have to do and what they have with regard to coverage and what they need to get?
Well, three things on it. Let's talk about the coverage broker has bought today. And it's been really cheap because it's called contingency coverage. And the contingency coverage there's no standard form. So I'm giving you the bare minimum, but that doesn't mean that the broker might not have more than that because there's more than this in the marketplace. Contingency form by its term means that what he's or she's buying for that policy is if the motor carrier's policy doesn't pay, their policy would pay as if the motor carrier's policy would affect. So in that case, they would have no coverage for this situation because this is not covered under the motor carrier's policy. This is covered under their own because it's their tort, their negligence, not the motor carrier's negligence that they're being held liable for. Now, there are some in the marketplace, so I recommend the broker, and I did this at the Broker Carrier Summit too. They don't understand it. There are 3 or 4 things the broker needs to ask their insurance agent and get it in writing. First off, will my policy cover the McCormick verdict if I get named in the suit for that? Yes or no? Second is, if my policy doesn't defend me, will it be primary or excess? And get an answer because it's all over the board. I have talked to a couple major markets in this marketplace, and there is coverage for that. There's coverage for contingency. There's some of the contingencies will cover them for their own negligence and not just what the motor carrier's policy pay. And some of the contingencies out there in the marketplace will actually defend them irrespective of what the motor carrier's policy will do, and will step in and start defending to start with. There's dollar signs added to all those things. Doug, so they got to decide which is best for them. But right now, they got to ask that question. Secondly, and with no surprise to you, the premiums are going to go up. And it's a knee jerk because we have no history. We don't know if it's going to cost us anything or not. I mean, there are a couple of favorable cases out of Texas that there was no liability in it. All their policy would have to have done is done some defense coverage in it. So it's going to be a while before all this sorts out. There are some coverage forms that the general liability and auto policy would cover them, but most of the insurance companies who provide those policies to a broker puts endorsements to take the coverage away. But the typical non-owned auto coverage that you can buy on a BOP policy would address their exposure, as well as a GL policy, because the exclusion G in it only excludes autos owned, leased, rented, or borrowed by the insured. And a broker doesn't do any of those things. They're just arranging for the load and getting named out of because of an auto involved in their business. So that would cover both of those things. And that's one option. Maybe some motor carriers some insurance companies will adopt in the future. Now, the other thing that they got to realize to start with, and this is what's concerning insurance, and a lot of motor carriers don't understand this, and a lot of insurance people don't understand. The standard ISO policy developed by Risk Tech, who develops policies on behalf of insurance companies, because they deal with the states and insurance companies. Insurance companies adopt their form. The standard policy bills in additional insured for the broker motor carrier's vicarious liability. The word says is that a broker or a carrier, or a shipper is additional insured on that policy without an endorsement if they're being held liable for the negligence of the motor carrier or the driver of the motor carrier. And that's the vicarious liability. And so now, if they're going to get named in the suit, depends on what the plaintiff's attorneys are going to allege in that suit. And the second part of it, the policy also goes in and says we have the right and duty to defend any case brought against an insured. So I think we're going to have some demands by the brokers or the brokers insurance companies for the primary carrier to at least do the first defense before the allegations are sorted out, because quote, that insured is named in the suit. And then the third party here is there's conflicts in this, as you well know. If there's conflicts between insureds, then the insurance company is going to have to hire separate counsel for each of the possible insured where there's a conflict.
Yeah.
And so I see the insurance companies reacting to this and figuring out what they're going to do. You're the lawyer part. I think my logic in reading the policy is pretty correct in this, if you agree with me on that, Doug.
Absolutely, Tommy. Tommy, I would never disagree with you on reading the policies. I know better than that. So, if any more on the broker side, or you see,
it's new ground.
Yeah.
And so, and what the ground is, surprisingly, I'm afraid this woke up the plaintiff's attorneys. They never thought about this, or to the extent that they're thinking now about it, because again, the two circuits allowed it, but you hadn't heard a lot of cases for those. And they haven't come back. So now everybody knows about it. So now the game plan for the attorneys will always name them in them and make them prove that the motor carrier was satisfactory or reasonable to have.
Absolutely, Tommy. And I have Googled the websites of a lot of the plaintiff attorneys and see what comes up. And the larger plaintiff attorneys now see this as a marketing opportunity. In fact, one of them even sent that was forwarded an email from somebody they sent out locally to say, hey, brokers can now be sued. This is a big deal, both in terms of specialty and cost. You got a trucking case, send it over our way, because we can handle the broker from both the experience and the cost of it. And guess what, Tommy? If they get a case, they're going to have to name the broker, because that's the reason that they use to get it from the other attorney.
The new reptile theory.
That's right. That's right.
We're just building on that philosophy about making up something has nothing to do with the crash today, nothing to do with the injury, nothing to do with what the driver did, but the overlaying problems in the marketplace and public information and the jury's reaction to these kind of things. And that's a shame. That's killing us all in this area, Doug. And I've been talking about that for a long time. There. So I think that one of the things that also will have to be in this, I'm thinking from an underwriter standpoint. Now, if I'm going to provide insurance to a broker, I'm going to ask him, what is he or her standard for accepting to using a motor carrier? Because that's going to be, a long time ago, my father was a broker, as you know, it's a trucker and a broker. And I was trying to write his insurance for his brokerage company. And what we came up with is I gave the insurance company he used the same trucks about 90% of the time. So I gave the insurance company who those truckers were. And they underwrote those truckers. And I got his policy. Well, we're going to do this now. It depends on what's your standard, because I'm not going to risk it unless you have something that will weed out the problem or cut the problem off before it's a problem, before something happens. I see that. I also see that, as you know, today's marketplace, even for motor carriers, cameras are gold. Forward and now more reverse. Driver view. I see that one of the things the broker might require is the trucks they use have these cameras, because you've got the court cases to get out of the case. And as long as we get out of the case, hopefully there'll be some other circuits or other Supreme Courts that will adopt the Warner case, where let's look at the facts and see before we talk about these other things, which is sound finding of those things. So I see there's going to be a question of the technology on it and what technology you have, either to assist the driver or record exactly what happened, Doug.
Now, tell me, that part is with regard to the brokers we talked about.
Right.
Now, how about the trucking companies, particularly if, as I anticipate, if they're not already, subject to indemnification provisions from the brokers in their contractual agreements?
Well, two things about that. The first thing is that there's going to be a lot of pressure on raising the limits of insurance. C.H. Robinson, as I understand, already went from 750 to a million, but I think, I thought most brokers already had a million without that. But they're going to have to look at it. And why? Because if the case gets settled at the truckers' limits, then the broker's out.
Yeah.
So the more dollars that they require for the motor carriers have, which would be the primary coverage offered to the case before the broker gets involved in, before the broker has to defend things, because they're the ones going to have to address the original negligence of the driver and what the damage the driver did and these kind of things. So I see that's happening. And I see maybe now this is going to even open the door to the Congress to do something, hopefully not to some degree that they talk about. And we have some friends on your side of the coin that says if the limits are higher, then we might be able to settle more claims, and we could go to court more. So I think that's going to be a pressure part. All the insurance carriers, insurance policies, let me phrase this. We're talking about the majority of the insurance carriers have these policies. There's some outliers who write their own policies, who put exclusions in them that are not there. I'm talking about the standard, what's available by the standard marketplace. They have contractual coverage in their policy, but it only says that will cover the motor carrier for the contractual, but as we know, most states, all but 4 states have anti-indemnification agreements or laws involved, which says a shipper cannot require the motor carrier for holding the shipper harmless for the shipper's negligence. So the cases that will be challenged also because the indemnification agreements in the broker-carrier relationship is going to be tested. And I even see, and here I'm maybe speaking to brokers and giving them some ideas of this, but I think the broker, if I'm the broker, I'm going to include in my contract to the motor carrier, you have to make sure your driver has these qualifications, age, experience, CDLs, whatever it is. And that's going to open the door a couple ways. Whose negligent is it now? Is it vicarious or not? When the trucker brings another driver to it, that the driver that didn't meet the motor carrier's breach of contract, it's going to open the door up on that. And I see, as you had suggested in an article I read, and I agree with that you might have the venue in the state law. I've been teaching this to insurance agents forever, that we have to look at those. In fact, I did a class 20 years ago, and had the vice president of the Colorado Trucking Association who opened my program. And I said, talk about insurance, something here. He said, well, the thing that's following us now is the motor carriers making the brokers making the motor carrier, or the shipper making the motor carrier held harmless in indemnity agreements for their negligence. And the American Trucking Association has put a major effort in to straighten that out. And again, all but the 4 states have adopted that part. So I see that's going to be tested again. And even going back to even maybe definition, what does vicarious really mean?
Yeah.
So I see this, and I think that the insurance carriers are going to have to be worried about who their insurers are getting loads from in this part. Doug. And the thing that has been the key to insurance gatekeeping is the CSA scores. And I won't debate anybody if that's legitimate or not, but we in the insurance industry have adopted CSA scores as the first thing the underwriter looks at, because that's what the plaintiff's attorneys are using in the reptile theory against us. I had an underwriter who says, when he's taught from me, and he says, when I look at a motor carrier, my first thought is, if they get in a crash, can I defend them?
Yeah.
And so I see now that's going to be the same underwriting that a broker is going to do, is use the public information they have now, which is the public information that's available in now Modus. That part, that's a whole different subject, but they'll see it's the CSA scores and how many out of service, and did they have any drivers violating or drivers for hour service violations or speeding or unsafe driving, because those are two things that the motor carrier can control.
Exactly.
And maintenance. I mean, the things that the public shows that the motor carriers can control: the hours of service of the driver, the unsafe driving of the driver, and the maintenance of the vehicle. And they're going to have to look at motor carriers. If the motor carriers do not have good scores in those three areas, then I don't think the broker's going to be reluctant to give them a load, which is going to weed some more capacity out of the marketplace.
Tommy, we're in a world where 95% of the trucking companies aren't rated. And of the ones that are rated, there's only 40,000 that are satisfactory.
Yeah,
I think about 10,000.
I say less than 5% are satisfactory.
Yeah.
That's a question I ask everybody. What do you think is 20, 30%? No, less than 5% of that.
Yeah.
Is that now? I think you know that the FMCSA has contracted with Blue Wire and G-Log to develop a rating system. But until we have that, all we have is the drop down that you have in information says this information is not for safety. This information, the motor carrier can be operated on the highway as long as they have not been put out of service or for other reason taken off the highway. And there's been a couple of court cases in Texas. They adopted that and said that was a standard the broker should have. That's all the broker had to do.
Yeah. Tommy, let me throw this out. One of the theories, and you kind of alluded to it before, I think that Montgomery, coupled with what I hear is almost an imminent increase in minimums insurance, between those is going to lead to a seismic shakeout in the trucking industry, particularly in terms of who can afford insurance and who can get the loads based on their qualifications.
Right.
Your thoughts on that, Tommy?
Absolutely. It scares me and I'm also afraid the brokers are going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because a smaller motor carrier driving his or her own truck, 2 or 3, it's probably safer than any big fleet motor carrier because they're watching themselves, and even 3 or 4, 2 or 3 drivers. I think the pressure there, and I think the high limits and all are going to press that. And that really bothers me because my father's a small trucker, and I've been an advocate of the small truckers all my life. And I think brokers tend not to give them the rights and the courtesy they needed to deserve, that they're sound business people who are out here just trying to make a living from point A to point B. So, but I think we're going to lose a number of truckers because of these things here. You can't clean up, depends on how fast they're doing it, Doug. You can clean your CSA scores up in 6 months if you watch everything.
Right.
Even sooner than that but how many even motor carriers that even the ones that we're going to have a problem with, ones over 20 trucks before they get a 500. I mean, the ones who don't have all the back room, who do not have the safety directors, who do not have those kind of things, that have been in the marketplace and not looked at these kind of things and checked their CSA scores. It's going to be a real weeding out. And like all this stuff that's been done, which doesn't bother me in one sense, but does, it's going to increase the cost of everything. I mean, this is going to be passed on, and there's enough public information to know it's going to be passed on. I think the next level, as you well know, is a shipper is going to be named in the suits. And if you think about it, the argument against a broker being named, and even is that the broker doesn't see the truck, but the shipper does.
Yeah.
And the first time the shipper loads a truck with bad tires, non-speaking English drivers, drivers have been out of service, the shippers are going to be involved in that. And now they're going to try to push that back to the broker. You sent that truck there. And that's going to be an argument in that area too.
Tommy Ruke, always wisdom in the insurance area, and always greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your time on this.
Doug, it's an interesting time. I will say that everything happening, and I would appreciate your thoughts on this, is that there's more things happening at one time than I've ever seen in the insurance industry. I mean, we've had the 80 Motor Carriers Act, we've had the ICC termination 94, we had one ELDs, but they're one thing at a time. We got all this stuff. That's right now.
we have all this coming. Word is that the FMCSA's got 11 regs queued up between now and the end of the year. We're waiting for the increase in the insurance, which they say is coming. I think this is we're hitting the perfect storm here, Tommy, from all
Right.
directions.
And I don't disagree with any of it.
No,
I mean, that's the problem. It's all here with us. It's we give us some time to breathe, to swallow the water. It's because everything they're doing, it's just how fast can you do these things?
Right.
And then the unknown, how courts and the third parties are going to deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you.
Oh, Tommy, thank you. Always a pleasure.